There are no humans. A set of words that was clearly nonsense. We had an entire family of humans on board at this very moment. Yet they rattled around in my head every day. Sometimes they rattled quietly, and other times they bounced around the skull, as if determined to escape. Why did those words hold so much weight? Why couldn't I escape them? I had asked the Grellian who said them to me long ago. It had just shaken its mane and growled, "Find out." How do you find out the truth of a clearly false statement? It was completely irrational to even attempt such. I sighed and went to the quarters of the only one I knew who was willing to embrace senselessness. As I clasped my 7 fingers around my wrist and raised my arm to knock, I considered if it was truly wise to peruse such madness. Unfortunately, wisdom was not my strong suit, so I knocked. Darrell answered with a bright smile. Those shining white teeth always disconcerted me. Other species felt the bearing of teeth alone was threatening. I never saw it that way, but then my species often greeted each other with a similar display of opening one's mouth to show that the venom sacs were deflated. But the white teeth, such a strange colour for something used to destroy any food placed between them. "Greetings, First Engineer. Is your wife home? I have a query and I think perhaps she might be able to assist." I crossed my arms to indicate my intent to wait patiently. Darrell gave me a wiry grin. "The little lady is indeed in, and I'm sure would appreciate some company. Apparently some fool decided to muck with my fix for airlock 3, and I was just on my way to check on it when you arrived." He turned his head over his shoulder and yelled, "Sally, we got a visitor. Thessel's got a question he wants to ask you." He then stepped to the side and waved me in, immediately leaving as soon as I was past the threshold. Yet another oddity of the species. Most would be protective of their mate, and at least ensure they were comfortable with such a visit before leaving. I heard Sally's voice flow out from further in. "Thessel, it's been too long. I'm in the kitchen. Gotta get the little one's mid-meal ready. Feel free to make yourself at home." I honestly was baffled. I knew Darrell from my few interactions, but not well. I had never met his wife or young, yet I was being told to act as if I were home. It made no sense. Still, I needed an answer, and this was perhaps the only place I could get one. I walked further in, making sure to shed my footwear before proceeding, eventually coming to the connected kitchen/dining room. On the small table was already sitting a porcelain cup, and from the smell I was pretty certain it was cacnosia, my homeland's pride and joy. I looked up at the woman cooking, and she just smiled over her shoulder. "I wasn't sure how you took yours, so I left it. What's the phrase you use, belated?" I chuckled a bit. "Belnthed. Not an easy word for your species, I know. I appreciate the gesture and your welcoming attitude. But why? We have never met. Your mate has only briefly interacted with me, yet you greet me as if I were truly coming home." She nodded towards the cup and repeated the word a few times under her breath, then said it more clearly. "Well, of course, you're part of the crew, so you're family. Though surely you didn't come here just to ask why I treat you hospitably. I didn't recall any precog notations on Ferromites, after all." I smiled. No precog, and you're right. I didn't come to ask that, though I appreciate it. I'm intrigued at the idea that a crew of over 400 are all considered family, but I do not wish to monopolize your day. I'm afraid my question will come off as extremely rude, though, so please do not take offense, as I simply wish to understand. It'd take quite a lot to offend me, and family is allotted much leeway, so please don't hesitate. I will help if I can. Her voice was soothing, and as I picked up the cup and sipped, I was surprised at how well it had been brewed. Most species couldn't stand the patience and effort involved in such an endeavour. I sighed and rolled my shoulders before looking into my cup. There are no humans. It was still nonsense, even more so now than ever. I can't get it out of my head. That phrase, it's probably false. You're standing here. Your children laugh and play a room away. Your husband is repairing one of his jury rigs on an airlock. You are here. You exist. So why? Why doesn't the phrase stop? Why does it ring with truth and rattle around my brain, as if determined to break everything else? I felt some of my emotive fluid leaking out of my skull. As I did, a cloth was placed next to me sullenly, right in view of my downcast eyes. "Thank you," I said, as I picked it up. Then I heard her sit across from me. "There are no humans. I've only heard it said aloud a couple times. It's true, though. That's why it won't leave you." I looked up at her, then stared. Had she gone mad? Had she forgotten what she was? My eyes widened as I studied her in detail, seeking something proving she wasn't in fact a human. She smiled. "You won't find it. I'm a human, that's true, but at the same time it is true that there are no humans. It's a strange concept to wrap one's head around, but it sticks in the brain because it's both true and false." I took a sip of my drink, trying to understand this concept, and still nothing came. She spoke even more madness than the nonsense phrase. Her voice was soft and clear as she spoke next. "I'm going to do my best here, but I'm not an educated woman, so please bear with me. You are a Ferromite, right? What makes you such?" I tilted my head in confusion. "My 7 digits that you consider fingers? My venom sacs hidden within my mouth? My emotive fluid response? My ability to calculate the distances of the void? My understanding of the solar winds? My knowledge of my planet's history? My understanding of my culture? These are just the basic things I can think of. I am Ferromite. This is something I know and have never questioned." She nodded. "And most species will say the same. They are what they are. They know it deep within themselves. There is no doubt about what one is or isn't. The reason there are no humans is simple. None of us, not a one, is that confident in what we are. Am I human? Biologically, certainly, for now anyways. How much is the percentage required, though? If I lose an arm and have to replace it with a cybernetic arm, am I still human? How about both my legs? If I were to transfer all the information from my brain into a computer, would that computer be human? My fear response kicked in then, and I had to actively force my venom sacs to deflate before I spoke next. "Surely you can't doubt what you are to this degree. Such thoughts would drive one mad, much less an entire species." Sally nodded and gave a sad smile. "Does our history make us look sane? I think that may be why it is as bloody and cruel as it is. Because none of us know if we are human, and we spent millennia trying to prove we were by erasing those we found to be too different. Never worked. And to this day, humanity is as fractured as ever, just more peaceful about it. I gave only one example of the doubt infecting everyone of my kind. Here is another for you. To be human is to be good. This is part of what many of my species believe. When we find someone we call evil, we will often distance ourselves by naming them a monster. They cease to be human in our eyes, because their actions have forfeited that right. Tell me, does your species ever write someone off so thoroughly as to claim they are not one of you?" I thought from my knowledge of Ferromite history. There were tyrants and traitors and awful Ferromites, but they were just that, awful Ferromites. What would one have to do to be lost to a species? What actions would lead to one being considered a monster? I couldn't help it. This was too curious a thing. Well, let's say genocide is probably at the top of the list, but to harm children and the innocent, killing just for the sake of killing, and a few other, more reprehensible acts that I won't speak of. These are the first to come to mind, but each human you meet will have a different definition and a different threshold for where one shifts from human to monster. She seemed so sad as she spoke, as if this truly pained her to even say. "You have codified laws, though. Surely between laws and connected language there is a clear line to be found somewhere." I tried to lift her spirits with logic, but the sadness in her eyes only deepened as she shook her head. "So you have the biology and the morals, but then you also have the question of consciousness, sentience and sapience. Am I still human when I sleep, when the universe moves without me knowing anything of it? Am I human if I am placed in a coma and have only the barest of brainwaves left? What's the threshold there? If I can't think, do I stop being human? If that's the case, how much thought is required to be human? She chuckled. Hell, if we toss in logic, how much rationality must be displayed to be human, and at what age? Children are, after all. A sudden loud bang and 2 screams of, "It fell on its own!" She sighed and responded back. "Clean it up before Dad returns." She then turned to me. Illogical. I stared at her, then, and I could feel the words in my brain falling into place as if they had begun to find the spot they had been bouncing around in search of, but something still wasn't quite right. "So if there are no humans, and all of you suffer such self-doubt, why did you leave your cradle world?" She chuckled. "Because we don't know what we are." The strange phrase settled in, and somehow what she had said made perfect sense. I nodded at her and spoke the words more clearly, with more conviction. "There are no humans." She giggled and spoke. "That there aren't."